All right, welcome back. So here we are again, another Toro. I made a video, obviously, about a TX1000 that had I think it was a right side or what I call passenger side drive issue. Track wouldn't move at all, but the left side worked fine. I did a video on taking these pumps apart, how I diagnosed it, how I got to this point, right? And so I've gotten many people that have actually called me from all over the country. Shout out to Donnie, from Houston, the Midwest. He called me. I gave him as much info as I could and help and guidance on his machine. And then a couple other people have called me, and then now Lone Ranger, landscaping. I have his business card in my truck, but anyway, he called me and said, hey, I'm up in Bellingham. I'm not too far from you. Bellingham's like a couple hours drive up north from where I live here in Bremerton, Washington. We're at my shop right now. And this machine, he came in because he's got a left side, driver's side track issue where it won't drive. So machine's here. This video is going to be a lot longer, a lot more in depth. I'm hoping to just actually film everything I do and lay it all out, and I'm in a better situation now that this is in a shop, so it's easier to make a video about it. So when we get a little further along, I will start to show you kind of a progress update. There's a couple key things I wanted to say in this video since we're here and the machine's in one piece. We got to remember that your hydraulic fluid tank is right here, and your hose, your suction hose into the pump is right here. So if anybody ever says something like, oh, it might be the filters, or it might be this, oh, it might be that, you got to remember that if your loader works and your track doesn't, this is the pump that creates the supply pressure for everything. So it comes out of the tank, this turns, and it creates pressure, and it goes through the system. Now, I will show on a whiteboard later on what I'm talking about, but you got to remember that if fluid comes out of the tank into this pump, that pump's turning, and if it goes out and you have loader controls, so I'm pretty sure it comes out of the tank, into the pump, out of the pressure pump, and then it goes up to your controls. Your controls split off and go to the loader, and then the other half of that goes down to the supply side of the drive pumps, your tandem pumps, so your front and your rear, or your left and your right pumps. Now, if the loader works, that means there's enough pressure to go down to the tandem pumps. If fluid's coming into the tandem pump and one track's driving, that means the other track should drive. If this is turning and creating pressure, your bell housing and your engine's right there. It's got a flywheel basically and a female spline shaft. This first tandem pump has a male shaft that goes into that clutch pack, the flywheel, whatever you want to call it, and that turns the shaft, and they're all male to female to male to female to male to female. And so this guy, when I pull it out and show you, it'll have male spline shaft on it, and therefore if these are all physically connected in one long solid shaft, because imagine taking a 1/2-inch drive extension, if you keep clicking them together and you stack them, if you can turn one, the one on the other end is going to work, right? It's going to turn also. So if one at this end is turning and the pump's turning, the engine's turning and this pump's turning, it's creating pressure. You can't say that the spline shafts are bad in the middle of a tandem pump, because pretty much, let's say this second pump has a bad spline shaft, right? So this is the female spline shaft in the flywheel is good to the male spline shaft in the tandem, and then it has the female output and the male shaft on this pump. Well, if that female male is bad, then this pump isn't turning. If this pump's isn't turning, then that means that pump can't turn. And therefore, there would be no loader pressure. So we got to remember that it's just a basic 1 + 1 = 2. If this pump's turning, you already know you have supply pressure. Hold on. If that pump's turning, you should create supply pressure to the loader and then the supply side of the tandems. If the loader works, you know that this pump's working and all those shafts are connected. Now, if nothing worked, you'd have to pull this pump off and let it hang. And if the female coupler in the tandem is not turning, then you might have to go all the way back to the flywheel assembly back in here. Now, there's a couple things that I noticed, which is really interesting about this setup, is he had a shop up north theoretically look at this thing and theoretically give a diagnosis and mention that, actually, I take that back. I'm not entirely sure what they recommended, but when he told me, I said, that does not make any sense at all. Let's go back to basics. Now, he did mention that the mount of this tandem pump to the bell housing has bad bolts. Now, I can see that this bolt is physically loose and this bolt is physically broken. So I'm gonna have to pull that bolt out and strip and pull this entire assembly out of the machine to fix. Actually, number one is gonna be extracting that broken bolt that's in there. I don't know if you can see it, but right there, broken bolt. I gotta extract that and fix that. But because I have loader, obviously the loader's up in the air, because I have loader hydraulics and one of the tracks is working, I know that it's not a coupler issue, and technically this is all held in place enough for that spline shaft. It's just male and female spline shafts, so it's not going to go anywhere. This is going to rattle around more than you want, and you don't want to damage something. Now, the next thing I'm going to be checking pretty much is if I have hydraulic pressure, I know that this is good, so I can pull that off. I'll pull this front pump off, and I'll pull the rear pump off to extract those bolts and fix that in the rear. I'm going to go straight to pulling that tandem pump apart and making sure that that revolver barrel looking thing is not seized or frozen. Now, we did talk about a gradual decline in function on that track. Somebody had recommended to him, oh, you should probably check your filter. Well, if the filter was bad, you wouldn't have supply on either one. You wouldn't have track driving on either side if you had a hydraulic filter issue. So I kind of shot that one down and I said, nope, let's go straight to the basics and see what we got inside. So that's kind of where I'm at to start this video. A little bit long-winded. Obviously, there's a lot of information. I know that there's people that have asked me for a more in-depth view of how this works, and I will go through the process of that, and I will try to, I'll even try straighten you out on what the part numbers are, where to find them, a part diagram, O-ring and seal layouts, all that kind of stuff. But just follow along and I'll try to help you as best as I can. Okay, so I'm back in the shop that can kind of continue this project. I'm going to do a step-by-step, or more or less just kind of show you the chunks and steps I go through and how I accomplish things. I'm going to take the battery out. I'm going to take some of these brackets off. I'm going to loosen these lines. I'm going to pull this pump off. I'm going to start to get this thing taken apart. I'm going to do the best I can for showing you things. My lighting may or may not be very great, but I'm going to try. That's all I can do. So remember, there's things like this big rubber line right here. This is your suction line right here. And it goes into this pump. And then if the engine's turning, that means this pump's turning because all the shafts are connected. I kind of said that earlier in the video, that if you have loader controls, or if you have any hydraulic pressure anywhere, that means that this guy's turning, which means that the center shaft, you don't have a sheared shaft in this, your front tandem, your rear tandem, or your coupler to your flywheel or the engine. So I'm gonna pull this off, set it to the side. It might spill some. You take these lines off, you might spill a little, but it'll stop pretty quick. And then it's gonna be breaking loose like these Allens. Sorry, this is freaking bright. We're gonna take these Allens out, and then we're gonna have to loosen this bracket up in here, which is gonna be a through bolt from here to here, and there's a rubber bushing in between. And then you can tip that bracket and then pull that pump off and set it to the side. And then this battery tray, the bolts are actually inside a cavity, so you can't take that out if I remember correctly. So that's going to be in your way, but you could just work around it. Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of go along and kind of show you what I got. Remember, always use your lockout bar. Get this up, set it on the bar, and therefore if you did something like crack a line loose like this guy, which is your loader lift arm, by accident, or you broke a line, that thing doesn't come crashing down on your head, because it's not going to feel good. All right, I'm going to start. Okay, first thing, I'm going to take this side off. this guy off, this line, and I might end up taking this fitting off just to make space for these Allens. Just a couple key facts. These are 14 mil bolts when you're taking this cover off. These are 12 mil nuts. This is 15/16 and 15/16. Technically, I think it's a metric, but even if it's a little sloppy, it works. I got these loose. This is an 8 mil Allen. These are 16 millimeter bolts, but you could also use 5/8 because that also gets them off. It might be a little sloppy, so just use at your own judgment. So yeah, let me pull that off. Okay, I got a couple things off. These you can get off with the socket, 1, 2, 3. This back one, you have to take a wrench and kind of come up and break it loose, and then you can spin it off with your finger. Once you get it like that rear one loose, this clamp actually just rotates out of the way. And then you pop that line off and then use the socket to take it off the rest of the way. By the way, I am using flat face. These are flat face fittings. I'm using a cap kit, just like this. You can get these online on Amazon. Get it from your local hydraulic shop. I don't know exactly which sizes these are, but it's probably like a number 8 or a number 10 is what I'm using right now on these guys. But keeping your stuff capped, keeping it clean, saves you in the long run. I'll put a bag over this guy probably. Now, fun fact, these two Allens, the number 8s, you don't really have space for that. And you always run into things like once you actually get it in, sorry, I'm trying to do this one-handed. You get it in these weird funky places, and these are extremely tight, especially if they've never been taken off before. So here's a trick for you. If you're confident with it, sometimes it's not best to use the ball end. If you have ball Allens, you may break them off, but if they're good quality Allens, you can put this guy in here like this, for example. Probably do it over here so you can see it. Okay, you got it like that. Take a socket that's just a little bit bigger than this. So in this case, this is a number 10, number 8 Allen, number 10 socket, and a 3/8 long extension. And then you can put this guy in here like this, and now you got a breaker bar, and then you can break these guys loose. So that's just a fun fact. Okay, 2 Allens are out. This bracket, once this guy hits that fitting on the side I was telling you about, I actually just left it on just for simplicity. But when the bolt comes out and the head will hit the fitting, but if you keep unscrewing that bolt and you actually pull this bracket kind of like this, you can pull on it and it comes up and that rubber bushing. Then all of a sudden you have enough space, you just slide that guy out and put it there. Do remember that there is a big O-ring right here in this groove. If you leave that out, you will get this dribble coming out all the time. Trust me, I tore an O-ring one time putting it back together and I had to do it twice. So save your effort, don't mess that up. So next up, what I'm gonna do is pull a battery and I'm gonna undo this through bolt bracket. Now the thing about this is you'd have to undo all these lines off this bracket. So this is all one welded piece on the back side, which is what these are going through. So technically, going through all that effort's a waste of time. Don't do it. So don't worry about it for now. If anything, you might find that you'll have to pry this up or shove something in here and tie it, pull it away to give you access to get the tandem pumps out. But I think I'm gonna be able to get it without doing that. So let me move on to the next thing. So by the way, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start pulling your lines. Let me grab a flashlight. Okay, so couple lines here. You have this line right here, which we got to take off. These is tandem pumped at fucking light. This hard line, no. So that hump line, that connects the two pumps together. We're actually going to leave that on and probably pull this whole entire tandem assembly off of the bell housing in one piece. And then you're going to have a hose clamp here for the suction return line. These are your pressure outputs to one drive motor, and then behind it would be pressure out to the other drive motor. And then you have your pilot control 1 and 2, pilot control 1 and 2. And then from there, you're pretty much done for removing lines, and then you could probably undo the bell housing bolt and pull this whole thing forward. So, I mean, I've only been here for maybe 20, 30 minutes, and this is where I'm at so far. So let me see how fast I can get this done. Okay, so I got the battery tray out. It actually turns out because this loader's up, you can actually reach through this rear pocket right there, and you can get these bolts on the tray. Excuse my skills here, I'm trying to multitask. There's the tray, it's out, great access. These are 11/16 for your pilot lines. Remember, cap the lines, all that kind of stuff. Now, please do yourself a favor. Take a paint pen, take tape, take a zip tie, pink zip tie, anything, and mark which one. Just mark one of them. So like, for example, this is on the right, so put a pink zip tie here and a pink zip tie here, and then same one here, pink zip tie. You don't have to do every single line, every single fitting. You just have to know that if there's 2 fittings, that they should go to one side, and if there's 2, one of them goes on one side. Now, obviously these ones are shorter than these ones, so you can't mess them up because these ones are extending way over here. These ones wouldn't reach. So therefore, deductive reasoning would say that if you disconnected all of them, you don't have to remember where they go. All you have to remember is short white is over here, long white is over here. Easy. And then down there, that's your pressure in. So remember earlier when I was saying if the engine's turning, it's going to turn tandem pump 1, which will turn to tandem pump 2 because they're coupled, male and female spline shaft. And you can actually see there's the female end of the shaft, there's the male end of the shaft. So it's just kind of daisy chaining, right? So if this is turning, it's sucking fluid in out of the tank through the pump and then pressurizing down the lines that we were taking down that way. Now there's 2 lines. One is going to go hydraulic circuit and one is going to go transmission circuit. So the transmission circuit's going to go up to your joysticks, and then it's going to go in one, and then it'll either go left or right, and then over to the next joystick, left or right fitting, and that's your turn your pilot control this way or the other way. You got to remember that I'll probably show you in a second what it looks like inside, but your pilot controls are just moving a piston left and right, and it's got a kind of imagine it hooks right here, and it does this, and it turns this plate, and this plate is what that pistol revolver looking thing is riding against on this side right here. So it'll kind of change it. It's called, I guess, what they call a swash plate. Don't quote me, I just fix things. I'm not an engineer, but that is, I think where I was getting with that is your pressure line. So it comes joysticks, and then it comes down into here, into the pump, and that gives you supply to create pressure. So you got supply into one pump. That hump looking line is to share the fluid with the other pump. So now you have one in, and then it's got fluid in one pump, and then transfers over fluid in the other pump. Next up, I'm gonna take the other side off, and then you're pretty much ready to pull this thing off of here. So remember, label your lines, cap your lines, keep it clean. You're almost there. Okay, so I've got the 2 front lower lines off. These are your outputs to the drive motors, and I'm gonna break those 2 in the rear loose. And then the hardest part about this whole job pretty much is gonna be this return line right here. So it's got a hose clamp, but then you got to break loose the seal that's got on that nipple. And so what I would recommend, and this is what I'm doing, is I've got, see if you can see it, the bars going in the armpit of that bend, and then it goes straight back to the flywheel. And so what I can do is I can lean on it with my knee like this, almost, there you go, just kind of pull on that line and create tension. Now, unfortunately, this pump's kind of flopping around. So what I do is I also take a flathead screwdriver and I come through the top or a shorter bar, and I get right in that rubber hose on the edge, and I get it to wiggle forward. And then what I do is I just kind of pull to the left with my knee, and then with my other hand, I come in here and use the fulcrum. And what I do is I get kind of against the tip of the rubber hose, like that. And then I use the heel on the pump, and then I just kind of I could pretty much do it one with my knee and my hand, and boom. And then that's all I needed. that is going to be the hardest part of this job. But now that that's off, all I got to do is two lines left, and then the transmission bolt is broken here, and it's actually broken on both sides. I didn't realize that, but damn. Okay. So there you go. It's broken. Anyway, I got 2 lines, and then this pump's gonna be on the floor. Okay, so here we are at right now. Let me see if I can show you some fun stuff. Okay, so the last thing I showed you was taking off those lines on the rear. Those are your output to your drive motor right there. You can see it, Jesus. Now, the bolts, as you can see, ooh, look at that. Those, this guy's got some bigger problems, but we're gonna figure that out. So one bolt was broken. Bolt over there was broken. Bolt over there, it's just, who knows what the heck happened, but it's just gone. So as you can see, this pump is in a very weird position. So to slide it forward, I'd have to take this bracket off and undo all these lines, which I remember I said, don't do that. It's kind of a pain in the ass. You make a mess, you'll drop the loader on your head. Don't do that. So what I did, you see that bolt's broken off. Either that or the bolt's too short. I think it broke off. Yeah, the other half of the bolt's still in there. So what I did, and the other thing is you can do the whole pull on this bracket forward to give you some space, and it will slide straight out. A couple things. One, I did take out that center bolt right there. God damn, it's fucking focus. So the other thing I didn't mention to you was you'll have to reach under. There's a Y right here. There's 2 lines. Those are return lines or suction lines. I can't remember actually. So you can undo the hose clamp over here, which is that guy right there. And then the whole thing can slide off and you could rotate it. That'll give you access to this line. Now you can undo this hose clamp and then that'll come off. So you remember when you put this back together, you'll have to put one on, get it tight, spin it back into place, shove that on, tighten that hose clamp, and then there you go. It's kind of hard to get to that, so I just recommend doing it this way. Now what I did was I pulled this pump straight forward to where it was decoupled from the flywheel. And then from there, what I did was I pulled it and I twisted it this way and I tipped it up on end, and that's how you see it now, and it'll come straight out through this hole. And what you could have done once you got those lines loose was tip this bracket forward like I was telling you, and then take these pilot control lines off, the fittings, the 90-degree fittings, because that height, you really need that height to get it to slide under this bracket. So this is what I did to avoid taking that off. We'll see how it goes back together, how much of a pain in the ass it is, but pretty much where I'm at is I'm gonna undo that hose clamp, and then this is gonna come out through this hole, and then I'm gonna put it on the bench and show you the inside. Okay, there you go. So I pulled that one line off on the one leg, and I actually just curled it up, so now it's right there by the exhaust, and I didn't drop almost any fluid, which is cool. Probably because I already dropped it earlier. But anyway, so I pulled it straight up, gave it a 90-degree to the left, pulled it straight back. Now here I am, and I'm just gonna set it on the bench and talk to you guys in a second. Okay, so I got these busted off the lines, and I do wanna say that they're right in this banjo bolt, actually this line when it was still connected. Right inside the pocket, there was a metal, chunk of metal. It was metal flake, more so. I think I knocked it loose, but there was a metal flake, and I said, okay, well, let me take the other end of the line off. I know I said I wasn't going to do that, but I did just for simplicity, because I wanted to see if there was metal in here, which there I don't see anything yet. Wanted to give you the note on this wrench. It's a 17, right? But here is the end profile, if you can see this. Let's see if we can get this figured out. See how dished out that is? Look at that. There's like nothing left of it, but that is the key to this side bolt. Now, I don't understand who the heck designed this thing, because, man, they just, some people sometimes. Okay, so check this out. So you can't get a wrench, a regular full-size wrench on this guy. Let's see if I can't get it. You can't get it in there, but if you take your ground off end, right, and you clock it just right, you fit right in the pocket, and it just all of a sudden clips right in, just like that. Now, it's kind of hard to do on camera, but let me get this figured out. I literally just tried this a second ago and it worked. Okay, so now I got it on and you can see it fits in perfectly. It fits right. See if it goes right in there. Come on, you stupid iPhone. There you go. Look at that. So that's where we're at. It fits in perfectly. And now here's a couple things I wanted to mention on, I don't know why this won't work. Stupid iPhone. Okay, so when this is bolted in, so you're looking through the front cavity of the machine, this is what you see, right? Well, you've got a metal wall right here, the red painted wall, and you cannot do anything in there. You might not even be able to reach it. Now, because I took the battery tray out, you could reach straight down, but what I did was I took a pry bar, I set this up, got it to where I needed it, and then I put a piece of wood or something deep in the hole, and I took a pry bar and went way in there like this, and then I heeled up on it and I pushed on the bar, and then I could pull up on the pry bar and break that loose. Now, blooper. Now, with it being out of the machine, if this bolt is extremely tight, because trust me, these bolts were stupid tight on the last machine in the last video. So if you're in a tight bolt situation, what I would recommend doing is putting it on the bench and tapping on the wrench with a hammer, because that kind of gives you an impact motion, and that might help you out when breaking it loose, especially if it's not braced to the machine or the engine itself. So let me take these bolts out and take it apart for you. Clean up my stupid ass mess. Okay, so I got this front cover off. So a couple notes. One, these are 8mm Allens, but a fun fact is you can use, not an iPhone to film, Jesus Christ. T50, it's basically an 8mm. It'll work on an 8mm bolt. But I've noticed that if you have sloppy Allen bolts, for example, and you use a T50 or something, well, in this case, it's a T50. But if you have sloppy Allen bolts, you can use a Torx bit, star, whatever you want to call it, and that will help you get those bolts out. So I actually use that a lot. And I use my little 90-degree impact, and it takes all those bolts right out. Okay, key fact here. Now that you've pulled this cover straight off, set it over there. There is a yellow O-ring, a thick rubber O-ring on the backside. Remember this front groove I told you earlier in the video has this big black O-ring? Well, that is also in this front face too, because this guy goes like that, right? And then your hydraulic pump that we were talking about earlier, the silver thing bolts right there. Okay, so leave that there. This guy is a shaft coupler. This goes from male end to female end. Let me see if I can't get this guy to focus. Okay, so when you pull it out, it just slides right off. Okay, you got to notice that there's this groove on this side. It's got that lip right there. It goes like this, comes out. Okay, and this smooth surface here rides on this bearing. So when you put it back, you got to make sure it goes like this, not the other way. Also, I think this keyway is offset, so you don't want to put that keyway in the wrong place. Although that key doesn't do anything, I don't see what it connects to, but the measurements on that, this section's longer than this bottom section. It's not exactly in the middle, I don't think. So what I would do is when I say, okay, we take this guy out, right? And then we just set it down like this into its groove, and it actually will catch that lip and stop right there. Can't go any further. So just leave that there. You won't lose track of it. Okay, now the second worst part of this job is, and don't mind the glare, I'm gonna try to figure this out for you, but there's like a shadow that's making it look like there's an O-ring in there when there isn't. But see that snap ring in there? There's a snap ring in there. That is very difficult to get out, but I'm gonna try fish it out with these long guys. And you want the external shaft snap ring pliers, so when you put it on the tip and you spread it, it pulls the ring off. So there's a little bit of you get it to kind of hook, you get it to spread a little bit, and then you can actually just pull this cover towards you and push the shaft in at the same time, and then the snap ring will pop out of the groove and lay on the shaft. And then you can just take your hands and do this number and push the shaft through and pull the cover off. Okay, I got that snap ring off. Yeah, I did have to twist it and break it a little just because it's so hard to get that thing to release and come out nicely, especially with it so deep. I probably could have had better long extension, narrower tipped pliers, but oh well, snap ring pliers. Okay, so once I got that snap ring off, this cover just slides off like butter. And then here's what it looks like. I laid the cover down. This is the revolver barrel piece, and these are the plungers. Now, in the other video, I talked about these being fried or stuck in the barrel. In this case, they slid right out, so I don't think this is the problem. I don't think this pump has a problem. Now, I'm tearing both of these apart just to show you, but so not necessarily that there's something wrong with this pump. I will say that this, see if you can see it. Let me actually clean this off a little bit. There's a couple notes here. One, there's a little tiny O-ring. Don't lose that. That goes in this cover right there. That goes in that cover right there. Normally what I would do is I'd lay this stuff down this way and build it this way so that all your O-rings sit in the groove. This is just sitting on the surface. It's kind of glued there, but there's a groove right here that it sits in. If you assemble this wrong, you can pinch these O-rings and it'll leak like crazy. So one of the things that I want to point out is this brass shiny plate right here. This is a critical piece. This is what your revolver barrel on the back side rides against. And there's also these little 3 alignment pins right there, so don't lose those. There's 1, 2, and 3 right there. So when you slide this off, this guy was attached to the back of this place because of lube and stickiness, but there's a dowel pin right here that little groove sits in. That's how you know you're aligned. But what I wanted to point out to you was clearly something of debris has ran through this. So please remember, keep your filters changed. It's cheap insurance. But if you look at this, this is perfectly machined flat. And in this case, there's actually a deep groove. This is a huge groove. Oh, goddamn. So this is a deep groove right there. This is scratched, huge gouge right there, little groove. Now, I wouldn't necessarily, if this pump didn't have a problem, I wouldn't recommend replacing anything on this. There's really no reason to tear this apart any further and replace it all. It is definitely usable. I will say that this is a sign that something's gone through the pump, but clearly nothing is like standing out as to be like, oh yeah, that's fucked up, that's messed up. So we got this little spacer comes out here, and then this guy comes out. And these are your pistons. And this is why it looks like a revolver barrel. Now these ride up and down in there to push fluid through these ports right here. And then they push them through here into a valley or a galleyway, which then ends up coming out of these ports and going up to a drive motor, right? So these, and it's going to be kind of hard to show you, but this this section in the back there's your swash plate or your angle plate. Now, this, when your pilot control, your fluid comes in this way, it pushes a piston this way or this way. And that is connected to the top half of this, which is right there. And that, in turn, angles this plate. And I can't really show you because it's kind of hard to do one-handed, but if you were to take this all apart and take the piston out, you could pry this over and make the swash plate basically go like this. And that's going to tell you which port to pressurize fluid into. And so in your rotation, as this is going around, you're going to have a high point and a low point. And that high point sucks fluid in, low point pressurizes fluid through. So those are some key points about how this looks. And really, there's nothing else for me to take apart. I think I mentioned we were talking about this guy being a drain. And you can see because it is a case drain. So that excess pressure, fluid basically comes in one side. This whole chamber is full of fluid. And then this is spinning around and excess drains out. But if the piston becomes angled, it will basically, being that it's submerged in oil, will pressurize down the circuit, go through these journals, and then out through one of these ports. So these three probably go to this way, and these three go to this way. So pretty much there's no metal debris. There is some scarring, but that's okay. That won't hurt nothing. And the barrels move freely. So I'm going to say that there's nothing wrong with this pump. Now remember, we have a drive issue with one pump, not the other. And, well, hold on. One track drives, one doesn't. So that means one of these pumps works and one of these doesn't. Theoretically, unless there is a drive motor failure. In this case, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to show you the insides of these so you know what to look for. In this case, I don't see any reason why this should have failed. Although, I keep seeing metal flakes. Remember I told you earlier there was a chunk of metal in that port. Well, as I'm talking to you, I notice, and let me show you, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but bear with me. God, fucking iPhones, man. It might be hard to see, but right here, flake, 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 flake. So there is metal in here, but it's extremely, extremely minimal. Well, I'm not really worried about it, but you could say that, oh, well, there's a sign that something failed. So we're going to keep digging. I'm going to clean this up, set it to the side, maybe put it together, and then take that pump apart. I will say that in many cases, because this is a ring, this is an O-ring and groove, there's a 50-50 chance that if you don't disturb this and if you just make sure that the dirt is cleaned off the rings and stuff, you probably won't have to replace it because it probably won't leak. Now, I haven't ordered any parts yet. I may still just order an over. So when you order the kit for this to rebuild it, which I'll show you guys in a bit, it should come with every O-ring, seal, and bearing and everything for these pumps, even if you don't need it. Like this cap down here, like we're not taking that apart because that's what you got to take apart to get this swash plate out. Well, there's no reason to take that apart, but your pump rebuild kit would come with all those parts. So I'm just a proponent of don't get into more work than necessary. If it's not leaking, if it's sealed, if the seal hasn't broken since it was manufactured, and you don't have to remove the swash plate assembly, don't do it. Save your time, save your money, save your effort. It's really no point in doing that. Just make sure that like your grooves are clean, your dirt is cleaned off, and you got to remember, like people might talk shit about, oh, you got to keep it clean. Oh, it's not perfect. Oh, there's a speck of dust, brother. This entire world is full of dust. You're not going to be able to keep everything perfectly clean. You're not going to, like doing field work as a mobile repair guy, there ain't nothing in this world that's perfect. So you just got to be careful, use your judgment. Yeah, see, this comes right up. That's gonna lay right in that groove up there. And then we're gonna wipe all this down, keep it clean, and just, you know, take your time putting it together, make sure nothing's crooked or cockeyed, and you should be okay. I'm gonna soak these with, like, you know, brake clean and scrub them real quick, but it's stuff that you don't really need to see in this video. So I'll get to cleaning this, and I'm gonna set this all to the side in a neat fashion, and then we'll probably pull that pump apart. Okay, I wanted to mention while I'm cleaning this off that if you look at these, they're like chrome plated or something. They're really polished. They're really shiny. You want to make sure that they stay shiny. If you see at any point that something's chipping, flaking, cracking, scratching, you need to probably not put it together, because that's probably how it'll start to gall up and get stuck in the piston bore. So these are pistons because they just go up and down in the bore, just like a piston in the cylinder, right? Now, you can't see it in the video very well, but if you look in close in there, you'll see like lines, vertical lines. That's relatively normal. If you can't necessarily feel them with like the tip of a pick, if you're running it in there and you don't feel grooves, then you're probably okay. But that's going to be covered in oil, and that's another reason why you got to have clean oil and good oil, because if it's the wrong consistency oil, it's too thick, it might not fit between the machine fit of these two items, and then you're gonna get that thing stuck, and you're just gonna cause problems because they're gonna gall up because they get hot, right? Or they get dirt in there. So before I put this together, this has a dome shape center. It's kind of hard to see, but it basically matches the dome shape of that. So what I'm gonna do is try to multitask here. This guy goes, hold on. We need these pins to go in their pin grooves like this. 1, 2, 3, and then this guy is going to go on top of that. And this isn't going to work for what I'm doing, or it might, but it might be kind of difficult. And then we're going to set these pistons into their bore like this. And now here's a great example. So there is your swash angle. So see how it goes like this? It's kind of hard to tell because you really need the plate on it. But see how that has an angle to it? That's how you create a pumping motion. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna get these slightly, pretty much flat, nice and snug. And then, because it's still all clean and lubricated in there, move this over, right? I'm just gonna wipe this guy down real quick. Now the whole thing I was mentioning earlier about pump shaft to pump shaft, you can see that it's male end, it's a shaft connected to, it's one shaft connected to the coupler of another shaft, which is connected to another, and then your pump is on the end. So as you can see, it's almost impossible to have a working machine if this shaft stripped the splines or if it broke. And I've heard people say, oh, it's probably a broken shaft in the pump, you need to replace the whole tandem pump. Well, really, I don't think that's it, brother. I don't think you know what you're talking about. Because if the shaft was broken, your hydraulic pump on the end of the 3-stack, your hydraulic pump, tandem 1, tandem 2, flywheel, if something broke in the middle, this wouldn't pump, which would mean that there would be no hydraulic pressure anywhere. Easy, simple test. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try, I don't think this is gonna work very well, but I'm gonna pick this guy up and I'm going to, it's not gonna work. So I'm gonna need 2 hands. I'm gonna put this guy down. Okay, so what I did was I took the whole barrel stack with the pistons up here and I put it like this, and I kept them nice and snug together, and I slid it on the shaft this way. And I actually had this tipped like that so that the pistons wouldn't fall out or the ring wouldn't fall out. And then I just put it on the shaft and slid it in. And then there's that little dome shaped piece I was telling you about. It's got splines that got a clock, and then there's this barrel has splines and it's got a clock. So you just kind of wiggle them around. And what I did is I actually held this still, and I grabbed the shaft on the other end and I spun it while I'm holding this still until it just clicked and it went all the way in. Now, the thing you got to really remember here is when you're putting this together, you have to remember that my pointer is missing. It's right here. Your pistons have to sit on that polished swash plate surface right there. If it's not on that polished surface, then as the swash plate angles, it's not even touching the pistons, so it can't activate the motion of the pistons. So, that's it. All right, I got some crazy weather going on outside for some reason. Jesus Christ. Anyway, okay, so I've got this the front pump, what I'd call the front pump, or the tail pump, or the one closest to the engine, whatever. So obviously it looks a little different. You still get your 4 bolts for your outside cover. You get your bearing and all these different things in here, right? And this is a hydraulic pump, actually. As this spins around, it kind of goes like this, and that creates hydraulic pressure. Now, if you want a better explanation of that, go YouTube somebody else's video. So put that there. I'm gonna pull this guy off, this impeller, and that's keyed into that guy. So that's kind of one of those things where this coupler is keyed on the other. Don't know if I can pull this out one-handed, so there you go. Okay, so this guy's gonna come out, and it's gonna go straight down like that, so you don't lose track of it. This will go like this. Okay, so as you can see, kind of like right here, look at that motion. That creates hydraulic pressure. That looks great, no damage, no scoring, so I'm not gonna worry about that. Now you're gonna have another snap ring in there, and once you take that snap ring out, you'll pull this cover off and you'll get to that inside barrel. I'm gonna put the camera down and keep on checking this out. Somehow this snap ring came out like butter. So anyway, I got that snap ring out. Now I'm gonna pull this cover off, and let me see if I can do this one-handed so I can show you some stuff. So now I got the snap ring out. I'm just gonna wiggle this cover backwards and come right out. There's your brass plate. Like before, we're gonna take this, turn it down. This looks good. This actually has a ding in it. This got clipped by something. And I'm gonna pull this guy off, and that guy's trashed. Yep, look at that, trashed. So that should not look like that. So I'm guessing there's something wrong with this assembly here. And remember, you got your groove there, your dowel pin. We're gonna set this guy in like this. Perfect. But yeah, those grooves are extremely deep. And the reason this is a problem is because as you're pressurizing fluid, it's leaking out. So you're losing your pressure. So that's not good. Plus, as this gets more and more scored, sorry for my focus, as this gets more and more scored as this is turning, then let's see if I can do this. There you go. As this is turning on that brass plate, it's getting more and more scored, which means it's leaking or bypassing more and more fluid, and we don't want that. I don't see any debris in the bottom, so let me pull out this barrel, this revolver. Okay, I'm gonna just pull this guy out, and oh, look at that! Look at all that metal. So you got all this metal. That's a bad sign. It's all over the swash plate. It's a bad sign. Now here's where the kicker is. I'm pretty sure that those pistons might be stuck, but let's find out. Let's grab this guy. They're not. They're not stuck. Aha. Okay. So that's good. So let's pull these out. And oh, it's broken. That's not good. So that kind of explains a lot. I'm gonna turn this guy over. But yeah, that's not supposed to do that. And so this piston is, I wonder how many other of these are falling apart. Oh shit, oh shit. So you can't really tell in the video, or maybe you can. Let me grab some paper towels here. Okay. So these pistons are gonna ride on that swash plate, right, as it goes around. Well, they have to move freely. Well, this is really stiff, and this guy is kind of making a clicking feel in my hand. And this one's broken, and this one is clicking, and this one is clicking, and this one's clicking but not as bad. This one's moves like butter, and this one is moving like butter. So this is not a good sign in terms of creating a pumping action. Oops. So that kind of leads us to where we need to look for what's going on. And I'm pretty sure it's just this pumping assembly is not creating pressure anymore. So what I would do is clean this guy out. Now the swash plate actually looks good. It's got no grooves in it. I can't feel nothing. So what I want to do is I'm going to probably clean this guy out. And as long as the swash plate moves its angle. Now, do I know what caused this? No. It could have been dirt. It could have been old fluid. It could have been heat. It could have been anything. That also explains why I saw that little metal speck in that line when I took it off. So what I'm going to do is do a little bit of cleaning, spot cleaning in here. I don't see, it's really just an open cavity with this piston in it. That's really all there is to it. What I'm guessing is going to have to happen is I'll order this brass plate, I'll order this revolver barrel and the O-rings and stuff, and that's pretty much it. And then I'll put it together and put it back in the machine. As you know earlier, we have this broken bolt that I got to extract, and I'm also going to have to go look at, actually, you know what? Let's take a walk in my dirty, messy shop. And, sorry, I'm just getting AED here. Okay, let's go take a walk. So my friend's got a V12 Jaguar that he's doing an engine swap on. He's not doing it anymore. He's paying his friend to do it. So hopefully that'll get done someday. Anyway, here's the machine as we were seeing earlier. And I'm gonna show you kind of where we're at. I have to get that fixed and that fixed. And I'm halfway torn between just ordering a new bell housing, because it looks like I can undo the bell housing without removing the engine. No, I can't, because the oil tank is down there. Sorry, the oil tank is right here, and there's bell housing bolts down there. So I might have to extract these and fix this in place, but I don't know how I'm gonna do that. Don't know how I'm gonna do that. Might have to remove the engine to do that bell housing. But anyway, that's where I just wanted to tell you what I'm kind of dealing with. And yeah, so we're just gonna keep plugging along here. All right, so now I'm at the house right now. I'm gonna show you guys a little bit about the whole parts ordering side of these Toro Dingos. So the Dingo we've got is a Dingo TX1000. There are multiple different options for machine models and stuff, but a lot of them use the same tandem pump is what it looks like. The internals are all going to be pretty much the same. So let's just kind of go over what the parts ordering process looks like. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with, here we are at Toro.com. Obviously, so this is kind of where a lot of dealerships will say, oh, well, you can't, here's what you can get, here's what you can't get, right? So if you look up the TX1000 through Toro, their parts diagram just shows number 5, which is the tandem pump, right? They don't give you a breakdown of the inside. Maybe I'm missing something here, but there doesn't seem to be. Let's go try this again. TX1. Oh, come on. By the way, guys, this is a lot harder to do filming and operating it's a lot harder than it looks. So model number, equipment, TX1000, really? So it might be going based on this code number, not necessarily model number. So anyway, we're going to scrap that, not waste our time. So when you're looking up TX1000, like I said, through Toro or through the dealership, they're probably going to tell you you can only get just the tandem pump. And so let's take that part number, for example, and go, I think it's over here. There's your pump, Toro tandem pump. They're going to sell it to you for like $8,700, right? And they say, oh, well, you can't take them apart. You can't rebuild them. You can't get parts for them. Well, that's not entirely true. So let's go through the process of what that looks like. So here we are at partstree.com, and I looked up the Toro TX1000 tandem pump, and it actually has a breakdown diagram that shows you, this doesn't work very well on the iPad, but you can see right there, Toro Dingo Compact, serial numbers, tandem pump assemblies, and there's a exploded view of the inside of the pumps, right? So if let's go through this picture a little bit here. So you can kind of see this is what it looks like as assembled. There's your lines that are on the side that I showed you earlier. And really what we're looking at is on the inside, there's your revolver barrel, which is group number 8. And then there's your brass plate, part number 4. And then there's all the cover seals and O-rings and stuff like that, right? So let's go through some of these parts real quick. So that's not it. What I did on this picture is I kind of just selected, okay, there's your plate, the brass plate, and then the rotating group. So see, just if you were to replace both of those assemblies in your tandem pumps, both front and rear, that's almost $2,400 before tax and shipping, just in 2 revolver barrels, what I call them, and 2 brass plates. Now, that doesn't include seals, doesn't include O-rings, it doesn't include anything else. But that is definitely cheaper than that, right? And a lot of times I've found, for some reason, people call me up and say, hey, my dealer, my repair shop, my whoever said you can't rebuild them, you can't this, you can't that, so we're just going to have to sell you a $8,700 pump, but don't worry, we got you a good deal on this one. We're going to sell it to you for $6,200 or whatever, plus install. Well, I mean, shit, you're easily on your way to 10 grand to fix it at that point, right? So one of the key things to remember is there are ways to get parts for the insides. And one of the things that I did, so when I did the last Toro video, a lot of these parts were listed as unavailable. I will give them that, but it seems like everybody got their shipment or their order somehow, or maybe that, I don't know what the deal is, but you can add these to cart. Now, there are a lot of times where parts websites will let you order them, put them in your cart and order them, but they're not telling you that they're getting them from their supplier, and their supplier doesn't have them. So it's kind of a give and take on whether you actually have the parts available on the shelf to order, because sometimes, I mean, I've ordered parts like this. They say they're available, and 2 weeks later I get an email saying you're going to be refunded because parts aren't available, which is like, why'd you let me order them in the first place and waste my time? So with that being said, those prices for those two was $252 and $909 each. So $2,000. I think my pricing might be off a little bit, but $252 for the plates each, and then $909 each, right? So And yeah, see, like there's a lot of different models that actually use the same tandem pump and same parts. So what I did though is I went on the last video. I had this guy that I found on the internet. His name's dingopower.com. He seems to be the guts genius of these pumps. Now see, like this, he sells reman pumps for $3,600. And also brand new ones, it looks like, for $5,700. But he has all these part breakdowns, these diagrams of the internals, and he actually has parts listed for all the parts on the inside. So like what I did last time was I got a revolver barrel, the brass plate, and a seal kit. This is not individual seals, so you might get a bunch of stuff that you don't need or don't use. But it was easier to just get one kit from him and have extra parts if I ever needed them than to piece it out one by one and hope I got everything that I needed, right? It is expensive. It's $350 for everything, but you know, you get everything. So take it here, $350 for your, let's add this to cart. So two add to cart on those seals. And then we're gonna go over here. These are the brass plates. Let's go 2. If we replace both of them, which I might just end up doing both of them just because. And then your revolver barrels. So he sells them for $650, so that's a pretty good discount. I only needed one, so let's add that to cart. And so now you've got more stuff. You got seal kits, 2 brass plates, and 1 revolver barrel for $1,900. And so that was definitely cheaper than this over here. But let's say I only did 1 revolver barrel. All right. And so now you're at $1,415, but we don't have any of the seals and O-rings and stuff. So you kind of have to go a little bit back and forth and make a decision for yourself on what's going to be good for you. I probably am just going to go with Dingo Power again, just because some parts like those revolver barrels are cheaper. And the brass plate, it looks like, is more over here, but you can get everything shipped from one place from one guy. And these guys, honestly, I think they're a smaller facility, smaller shop, and I would rather support these guys anyway than a big corporate dealer like partstree.com. Support to the little man. So this is also something that I was thinking about and looking at, was this whole bell housing situation where the guy's bolts are egged out. I kind of have to talk to the customer. Now, I was saying that there were bolts on the bottom side where I couldn't access them on the hydraulic tank. But if there isn't, because I don't see them here, I see one here, and then there's nothing, and then they're on the top. If that's the case, then I might actually just do the bell housing in place and order this also while I'm at it. Yeah, see? There isn't a bell housing. Interesting. Okay, well, I don't know what the difference is, but let's read it. Cast iron rather than cast aluminum will minimize bell housing tandem pump separations, includes all mounting hardware. So you're definitely going to add this to cart. Now, of course, this is just my recommendation. This is just what I've found. I can't tell you what you should and shouldn't do. I will say that since I made the last Toro video, even this guy didn't have any of these parts on the shelf, like the revolver barrels and he had 1 brass plate, and I think I needed 2, and the revolver barrel he didn't have on hand, so I did have to pay for them up front, and I did get put on a waiting list. But he initially said it was a 6-week wait, and I got the parts in not even 2 full weeks. So I got lucky. He got parts in. He forwarded them to me. It was great. I definitely would shop with this guy again. Dingopower.com is probably the place to get it. I do want to say that here's your breakdown, an idea of what parts cost and the insides, what the repair looks like, what it takes to take things apart, what it takes to diagnose things, what it takes to find parts and order them. I will say from where we were in the shop doing all the teardown work to now sitting in front of the iPad at home, that in-shop teardown and diagnostics work and cleaning and prepping, all that, I think is only like 2.5, maybe 3 hours worth of my time. So if somebody's telling you, oh, it'll be, 10 hours, 15 hours, whatever, to tear it apart and rebuild it, and then it'll be like another 10 hours to take it out and 10 hours to put it, if they're going to charge you like $5,000 plus a brand new tandem pump, that's another $6,000 or $7,000. They're probably trying to bend you over the barrel. Clearly, because I'm showing you, like, I'm taking the extra time to do filming while I'm doing it, and I'm not even that much time into it. So here is kind of where we're at, and I'm going to talk to the customer about what he wants to do with parts ordering and kind of go from there. So now you know what parts are available, what they cost, how to get them, where to get them from, how to look up parts diagrams, and yeah, if you needed a better representation of how that revolver barrel works, that's kind of what it looks like. As it spins, your pistons come up and suck fluid in on the bottom, and then they go to a different side, which pushes it to a low side, which pumps it out. And that's how you create pressure. Suck in, rotate, push out. And there you go. So yeah, if you need any other questions, just keep watching the video, and hopefully the next part of the video is me putting all this back together. Okay, I guess we're not done talking. So I wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of insight on like hydraulic pumps and parts and stuff. You got to remember that when you look at the world in terms of mechanics and mechanical systems and stuff like that, you might have 100 different machines that all do the same thing, and really they all run off the same principles, right? So fluid comes in, it gets sucked in, it gets capped, it gets pressurized, it gets let out, now it's at a higher pressure, right? So you got to think about a lot of hydraulic pumps. There's only so many ways that you can make a pump to pressurize fluid. So one of the things that I've noticed is that I'm pretty sure that the tandem pumps on these dingoes is actually manufactured not by Toro, because you also got to remember Toro makes a machine, right? They don't manufacture all the nuts and bolts and parts and pieces. They generally take parts and pieces from other manufacturers from all over the world and build a machine out of it. So that's why you have things like John Deere tractors with Yanmar engines. They're just taking parts from other people and partnerships and installing them to really cut down on the process and the cost of manufacturing a machine or assembling a machine, right? So one of the cool things about this is that realizing, I think that it's so Poke Lane. Let me see if I can do this here. Poke Lane. Probably a name you've never heard of, but they're actually in everything. Poke Lane is a hydraulics manufacturing company. They make all sorts of excavator and machinery parts and a lot of hydraulic things. They do a lot of hydraulics, right? So when you think about it, I think if you look on the bottom side of the tandem pump, you'll find a tag that says Poke Lane. And here's actually a funny example. Vermeer has a Poke Lane hydraulic pump. It's got a tag on the bottom. It says Poke Lane Hydraulics, right? But if you look at it, it's exactly the same pump that the Toro uses. The only difference is that it doesn't have an output drive pump on it. They just use a cap. So I bet you if you take that cap off, you could probably put your Toro pump on it, bolted in, just like you did before. I think actually this pump is upside down. Yeah, this is upside down. So let's go this way. Yeah, there you go. So there's your pilot control, 1, 2, 1, 2. Your side inlet, there's your pressure fitting and your 2 hoses. This goes to the flywheel. This goes to the front pump for the hydraulic system, right? But look at that, $1,100 for used hydraulic pump. Obviously it says it's not working. Came off a Vermeer machine. Diesel, the machine had 1,700 hours. We decided to just replace the pump instead of doing a pump rebuild because there aren't any shops in my area that will do it. I hear that cost would be about $500 to $1,000 to rebuild if you can find the right shop to do it. These pumps are $6,250 bucks new. This pump is leaking and is being sold for parts. It doesn't mean though that it has like those trashed brass plates or a seized revolver barrel. It could just be the O-rings that are between. And that really, when it says it's leaking, there isn't anything to leak other than some fitting O-rings, pilot control O-rings. Actually, this is on the wrong side. These are, yeah, it's mostly just O-rings. So, I mean, maybe I should go buy this for $1,000 or $500 or whatever and rebuild it, because there's not much to it. I just showed you guys what the inside looks like. But anyway, okay, so this is an example of how, you know, all these manufacturers, there's somebody that makes hydraulic pumps. Toro doesn't make hydraulic pumps. They don't care about hydraulic pumps. They care about landscaping machinery, right? So they're going to make the machine, which is just an assembly of all these other parts. So if you ever got curious and you wanted to build your own whatever machine, this is how you do it. You just buy tandem pumps, you buy an engine, you bolt it together, you secure it, you run lines, and now you are a machine assembly manufacturer. So if you go back here, the revolver barrel, if you look up hydraulic pump part names, you start to see that revolver barrel all over the place. So I bet you, because it's a poke lane pump, if I did some digging, I could probably figure out what the part number is for the poke lane barrel. And I bet you I could probably find, you know, that revolver barrel from, I bet you what you could do is just take some pictures and measurements of your revolver barrel assembly and let's see if we roll up here. Yeah, see, like you can see, like even Caterpillar uses the same pistons. Eaton Vickers, there's your barrel, 210, 220. I don't know. I think this is off of this is a different part number, and what it is the splines in the center are different. But you get the gist. Like if you just do a little bit of research, you might be able to actually find these pumps, these parts even cheaper, right? So could you, for example, take measurements of your part and just find poke lane and maybe just email them and say, hey, based on these poke lane hydraulics, based on the measurements, can they give you a part number to order that barrel assembly or the pistons or whatever, and then you get it for like $300 or $200 or $400 instead of $900, right? So when you can break it down like that, you know, a lot of people I've seen with repairing machinery, somebody will say, oh, well, it's, you know, it's a 1950 something, whatever, and they don't make parts for them anymore. And I'm like, well, what do you need? And they're like, well, I need this seal and I need this bearing and I need this. And I'm like, wait a second, a bearing is a bearing just by measurement. A ball bearing is a ball bearing. It doesn't have to be an Allis-Chalmers ball bearing or a John Deere ball bearing. It's just a bearing. So as long as you know the type of bearing, a roller bearing, a ball bearing, a sealed bearing, a X, Y, and Z bearing, right? As long as you know what it is, you can just get it by dimensions and measurements, and you might find out that they're everywhere and that everybody has them, and they're actually really cheap compared to like somebody saying, oh, you can't fix this because you can't get parts for it anymore. Certain parts, yes. Most parts, no, because a bearing is a bearing, a seal is a seal. It's just by dimension, thickness, single lip, double lip, right? Offsets, all that kind of stuff. Snap rings, nuts, bolts. Most of the parts of the machine are just generic parts. Now, of course, like the housing for the hydraulic pump or something, the housing for a part, the side panel, the sheet metal, those are pretty specific, right? But most of the machine is not going to be that specific. So I just wanted to tell you that just because I was thinking about that after I stopped the video, is some of these parts you can actually get. I know that the internal parts of these tandem pumps are by Poke Lane Hydraulics. They're not by Toro, so you don't think that it's a Toro supply thing. They're just trying to keep their designs a secret, because it's not. It's a Poke Lane pump, and they are using Poke Lane pumps in Toro machines, just like they're using them in Vermeer machines, just like they're using them in cat machines, that kind of stuff. Caterpillar doesn't necessarily, I don't think, make their own hydraulic pumps or their own tandem pumps and stuff like that. They just have a contract with somebody like Poclane or whatever Italian manufacturer to build the hydrostatic pumps, and then they put them in their machines. So I just want to give you that tidbit of knowledge.
Okay, so I've got that parts order in from Dingo Power that I was telling you about. So there's your bell housing kit. Here's your seal kit. Here's your brass plate that we're talking about. Look how shiny and perfect that is. Looking good. And then one of the revolver barrels. So this is what a brand new one looks like. I'll cut it open and show you. So pretty much what I got to do is get that pump assembly put back together, and then get this bell housing swapped out, and then we can put this all together. So I will definitely be scraping all this out in a few minutes. And then it'll look a lot nicer when we put it all together. I will say that probably for the sake of making things easier to work on, I would recommend probably putting the tandem pump assemblies, you know, reassembling them each individually, front and rear, and then installing the rear in there, bolting it up, and then sliding the front into it, put all your side pieces on, and then you just have to put on this front pump, which is your supply pump, remember? So that's probably what I'm going to try to do today and show you see if that makes, because maneuvering that whole double tandem pump setup through this kind of like around these brackets and hoses can be kind of crappy sometimes. And also I got to get that connected to a nipple, and then that hose, that metal line connected to the other hose, and doing it as one half of a tandem pump instead of the whole thing might be a little easier. So, all right. Okay, so we are back on this pump. I've got everything kind of wiped out, cleaned out. It's nice and clean in there. I got this O-rings brand new out of our kit. Here's our new brass plate, as you can see. Just remember that you have this little stud right here, dowel pin, and that's kind of your key indicator or indexing for this guy. And we're just going to let it click right in there like that. This can be kind of a pain in the butt to get into this along with this guy. But it's kind of a little bit of trial and error, and you can figure out how to make it go easier. I did want to show you that this is what the revolver barrel thing looks like. And kind of as it spins on that plate right there, this is going around with this spline shaft, which is that gear, right, that drives from the flywheel. When this swash plate kind of moves around, if you go like left or right with your joystick from the top and it changes the plate, what it does is it basically goes like this. And then as it's spinning, it's creating a high and a low, and that's creating a pumping action. And that's how you create your pressure. So now that we have this together, it's all shiny and clean. You kind of have to get this guy onto the spline without everything falling out, because this will just literally lift right out, and we don't want to do that. So that's a little tricky. Sometimes what I'm going to probably try to do today is get this guy on one end like this. I actually might end up tipping it like that, and let's see if I can do this one-handed. Go like this, like that, right? And then we're going to take this guy and kind of slide it onto this shaft like this, and get the splines in the back. Hit it, click, come on, brother. There it is. And then it's just gonna sit right on the plate in there. And that's it. And then so what we'll do is I'll probably leave this guy actually angled, so that this guy, when we pick it up like this, so when we go like this, might lose some wheel out of this guy. We don't want the plate to fall off, right? So what we'll do is, I might not be able to do this while filming or one-handed with filming, but let me try to put this together and see if I can't give you some pointers. Okay, so what I attempted to do was I kind of kept the revolver barrel end, which is this half, at a slight angle like this to keep everything loaded.
but it was almost flat, and I kind of slid this guy together, and right when they came to where there was just a sliver of a gap left and I could see that the brass plate wouldn't fall off the stud, I tipped the whole thing up, and now it's sitting where it needs to be. And what's interesting about this guy, you can kind of see it in there. This guy will not, there's a snap ring if you remember from earlier down in there, but you kind of have to press and hold that guy closed to get that snap ring in. So we did clean those surfaces, put the O-ring in, put the brass plate in, the barrel, and now I got to compress it and put the snap ring in, and then it's this half, and which we have another O-ring right here for, and yeah, it's pretty much it. In putting these two halves together, by the way, there is a snap ring that you have to kind of feed down in the side of this bore with these snap ring pliers, but this has been such a pain in the ass to get the snap ring in, so I decided to try a couple things, and I realized that, for example, if I take the snap ring, right, and I set it on the shaft, kind of like this, one-handed, and I take this guy, and this is a 5/8 socket. Obviously, it depends on if the center bore is the same dimension all the way down, so I would recommend trying this before you try to put the second half on. But put the snap ring on so it just sits here, right? There is a lip and it kind of bells out, but if you take this guy and you tap on it, it'll snap, and now it's in the groove, and you don't have to use a snap ring plier. And this guy, for example, will fit right down the center of this guy perfectly, and you pretty much will just put this together, squeeze this half to this half, and then you put this guy in, and then just tap it, and you'll hear a click, and then all of a sudden the snap ring's in. And let me try to show you what that looks like. So here it is together. You got the gap, right? Because this is kind of spring loaded, kind of pops up on you. So what I'm going to do is try to do this one-handed, but basically I'll take the snap ring, like I mentioned earlier, I'll set it right there, like that, and I'll take my 5/8 socket, put it down in there, and this is all kind of, the reason I use a 5/8 socket is because if you use like an 11/16, it's way too sloppy, and I don't know if it's going to grab the snap ring correctly. So what we'll do, don't make fun on my floor. What I'll do is I'll clean this guy off real quick. Okay, now I'm going to take this socket, put it in there, and somehow I'm going to prop this guy up like so, right? And I'm going to push this guy down, two halves together, then I'm going to tap on this guy. And then there's a snap, there's a click, I can look inside, and I can see that it's in the groove, and now when I let go, the snap ring is retaining it. So then I can't take the two halves apart anymore, and that's it. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this guy, replace the yellow O-ring, kind of like such, like this, right? Okay. And I'm gonna take this guy, put this guy in there. Okay. Now I'm gonna take this guy and flip it over onto the hump, and it does not look like, there is one dowel there. There's a male, female, male, and so that's how you orient them. And we're gonna slide these two together, kind of like, oops, this guy, rotate it like this. Okay, so this is not working as well as I wanted to. We're gonna put this guy in like this. There is one side that has a key on it, which is obviously gonna be the upside. And we're gonna do that upwards because there's a key in the oil drive pump. So what we'll do is, actually I'm gonna pull this guy back out. It looks like it's probably gonna be easier to do it this way. Put it in the drive pump, oil pump first. This is not my best segment of the video, I'm sorry. I'm trying. Okay, so that'll go there. This guy will flip over and hopefully it stays together while I slide it like such. There, it clicks together. And I'm gonna pause the video. If you get lucky and you can keep all the pieces together, I actually just backed this up because I was like, you know what, for the spirit of the video, I'll kind of show this. So what I did was I ended up just actually taking it piece by piece. And so you have your outer gear, your inner gear, your key, your center spline, right? So you slide this guy in, spline up, put this guy on, put this guy on, like such, like that. And it's really tight, so don't force it though, but it should just go nice and easy. But obviously there's one of these is supposed to go around the other and the other stays stationary. So the outside actually stays stationary and the center is what kind of goes in this offset pattern. And so now that we've got it here, what I'll do is I'll kind of line it up center, and you don't really have to get it perfect. But then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this guy and flip it on over. Don't force nothing, but remember you got these dowel pins you gotta line up. So when you get this set in here like so, and you get your dowel pins lined up, if that center ring, if this outside ring fits this housing correctly, then it'll slide right together. If it doesn't, you just gotta get your pins lined up. And actually you can see right here, it was perfect because of course I am, right? So if you see this is flush, then obviously that is together correctly. Then all you gotta do left is put these bolts back in, tighten them down. I just get these tight. I wish I had a torque spec for you guys, but I don't. And basically that pump is completely done. So for what we need to do, obviously, like I said, there's seals, there's O-rings, there's pilot controls, there's all sorts of stuff you could change and fix, but there's really no reason to do that for this case. We just needed to replace what was broken. Pilot controls work just fine, so there's really no point in taking this apart and rebuilding it and pulling the pistons out and pulling caps out and putting seals in. There really wasn't a point in doing that in this case. So take it for what it is. I'm not saying this is the best perfect situation. This isn't a brand new pump, but it's close enough for what we need to do. So I'm gonna tighten all this up and then move on to this pump. I got this other brass plate that I gotta put in. The revolver barrel was perfectly fine in this one, but we wanted to do this just for the good measure, because if I remember correctly, there was some marks on this that we didn't like. So let me straighten that out. Tandem number 2, or the front pump, or otherwise known as the pump furthest away from the flywheel. As you may remember, this is your flywheel drive coupler, number 1. Number 2, I noticed that these parts, a lot of them are the same. So like the main housing looks to have the same amount of ports and stuff on both sides, both ends. They're just, this one's capped. This has a suction or a supply line, suction into your main area. And then it gets pressurized out because of that revolver barrel, which then goes through here, which then comes out, right? Okay, so when you took this cover off on your number 1 pump, you take your 4 bolts out, this cover comes off, and there was that oil pump drive gear, this coupler, all that stuff. So this one has the same parts, except there is a drive coupler, because this coupler goes in here, and that's what turns the front hydraulic pump that's on the nose of all of this, that feeds the main hydraulics, I think, to the loader and the lifter. So it doesn't have that snap ring that we saw earlier. It doesn't have the key, but the notch is still there. So there are some interchangeable parts there, basically. If you go put this guy in the other way, then it may not protrude correctly. So you just got to remember the short side with the key is going to be over here, long side in. There is no drive gear, like I said, or oil pump, the two-piece thing with the ring. So you don't have to worry about that when you're putting this together, which makes it a little easier. This guy, I think I already got the snap ring out of it, so I'll just slide this guy off. Nice and easy like that. And there is the beautiful insides that we were talking about. Remember I said I didn't feel like I needed to replace this guy, although you can see some scratches right there. And there is some grooves on this side. So it is starting to fail, just like this one. Obviously that one is number 1 pump, but the grooves are a lot deeper. And, the grooves are a lot deeper on the old number 1 than they are on this one, but we're gonna replace it anyway. And we have a new one right here. There is no grooves in this one, obviously, because as I said, it's brand new. We need to kind of slide this guy together. And remember that when you put this guy in, there's a lint there. All right, I put that brass plate in, set this cover down on it, made sure that the dowel pins were lined up on the, right here, this guy, and the 2 cover pins. Kind of like how that guy looks with its 2 pins, right? And set it down, press it down, and snap ring. Same thing as before. Now that we've got this, because it doesn't have the drive coupler on it, which gives you a square surface to sit on, I'm kind of using a hammer to kind of help balance it a little bit, just to make it a little easier. But anyway, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna change this O-ring out since we're there, and get it flipped over and put the bolts in. All right, so now that I got these 4 bolts in and tightened down, pretty much where we're at right now is it's time to put this whole thing together back in the machine. I think I'd mentioned earlier that what I'm probably gonna do is probably do this guy in the hole, put its mounting bolts to the bell housing, and then what I will do is I will slide this guy in the hole into this coupler, and then it's got 2 bolts that go through here. And I think this is the one we use the fancy ground down wrench for. What that'll do is it'll make it a lot easier to finagle this in and get hoses connected and put hose clamps on and set it in the place when it doesn't weigh twice as much. So the key things to remember there is once you start to put this together, that we got to keep these ports clean. We got to keep dirt from falling in them. And then obviously when we put this stuff together, that we got to keep these clean and, you know, change these out and stuff like that, which some of them are in your kit. When you go to change them, make sure you get them tight. It might be a little harder to see, but it will be not too bad. I think it'll be easier when you do it in 2 halves like this.
Well, I guess the next part of this process is actually getting this bell housing done before I put the tandem pumps back in. It looks like we're gonna have to take out some perimeter bolts around the bell housing, and I think there's 2, 1 and down in the bottom, which is kind of just gonna be like this. So it's gonna be this side and then over here, which it's kind of hard to see at the moment, but I can kind of see them. I'm not necessarily sure how we're gonna get to those. We have this hydraulic tank that's kind of in the way. Just my luck, but I will try to figure out a solution here. That guy right there on the starter is a 6mm Allen. Those big bolts are 17 millimeter. And then I don't know what the bottom is yet. And then the top corner, as you can see right there, that's another 17, and I think that's another 6. What I'm gonna do here is for those bottom 2 bolts, I'm probably gonna pull the motor mount bolt and strap the engine straight up so I can get access with a long extension.
Bear with me as I try to figure this out for you. As you can see right there, I have a 90-degree impact on a 15 mil or a 9/16 top and then a 14 millimeter nut. Same thing on the other side. And then I should be able to just pick this thing straight up and pull the bottom 2 bolts out that are right behind this tank. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I've got some of the bell housing bolts out, and I realized that if I undo that top, the motor mount bolts, right? There's a bolt head up there. I think I said it was 15 mil or 9/16 and then a 14 mil nut. If you take those 2 out, you can just push on the exhaust pipe and this whole motor tips up a lot. And then what I did right down here is I've got a T40 Torx on that Allen. I think I said it was a 6 mil Allen, but a T40 Torx on this 1/2-inch gun. Those are pretty damn tight. So I did is I just pushed this guy up, give it a couple smacks with the impact, and it came right out. So I'll do that on the other side, and then this bell housing will be off. So what I did here is I told you that one corner, which was kind of hard to access, we just lifted the motor up and used this, used an impact and a T40. Well, it turns out that it's kind of the same situation over here. Let me see if I can zoom in for you. Kind of hard to see it, but right in there, there's a bolt right there, same thing, T40, it's 6 mil, but it's behind this 90-degree fitting that's part of the tank, and it's like a 1 3/8 is the square with the nipple, and then the nut gland, the locking nut on the bottom's like 1 inch and what is that? 9/16 or 1 inch and 5/8, something like that. So it's pretty damn big, but you can't get a wrench in there to take that apart and rotate that fitting to the left so you can get a straight shot at it. But I realize if you just pry under the motor and keep pulling up on it, you'll eventually get enough clearance to get that impact gun in there. And so that's what I've used. All right, and on this side, we had one more bolt on this corner of the motor. It has a nut on the back side. I don't know what kind of idiot designed this thing, because there's literally no access to that. You can't see it, can't really feel it, except for when you go through this little hole. But then you end up dropping the nut, which is actually down there. And I have no idea how I'm gonna get that back in without breaking my hand off trying to put it back together, but I'll deal with that later, I guess. So I guess once I pull that bolt out, the bell housing slides off. Out it comes. So I had one more bolt, which was right here, 13 mil top, 12 bottom, just a support bracket. But now this thing just kind of slides right back and out. You just kind of tip it, pull it, wiggle it around some hoses, and she's out. Look at that. Now, this guy being an aluminum housing, I mean, this I could hold with one finger. You know, it weighs nothing. The cast iron one, though, is definitely a lot more. So anyway, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna set that guy in there, line it up. There's dowel pins, one up there, and I thought there was one more, but I guess, oh yeah, there's a side one. So I'm gonna get this wiggled in. It's gonna be kind of hard to do. So there's nothing wrong with that coupler in the center, and I don't see a reason to pull all that apart. That wasn't an upgrade. I think it's just the housing is an upgrade for the cracking and the chipping issue on the mounting holes, kind of like what we saw on that one. So I'm probably gonna leave that for now, and I'm gonna put this guy in, and there you go. All right, a tip here is now that I got this bell housing in, I'm putting this bracket back in, and for some reason, this rib on the new housing interferes with this bracket. So I actually had to take this and grind it down to make it fit. I don't know what the difference is. Maybe it's just a casting difference. It's slightly higher. I do notice that on the old housing, there is also a rib, and it actually has a wear mark in it. So it was worn into place or forced into place. So you have to clearance that bracket to get it to fit right, but now that's in, and I'm just gonna snug it all up. I got that one Allen right there. I said it was gonna be a pain in the butt, and it really was. What I did is I took a 14, kind of slipped it through this gap right here, if you can even see it, right there. Just barely made it. Just barely made it. But I got it. Got it tight. Use that 6mm extension on this gun. Got that tight. I've got the bell housing bolts tight. Now I've just got to get the 2 bottom ones in and bell housing's done. So I've done a little bit of scraping and cleaning, trying to clean out some of the debris before I go any further forward. I'm about to drop the tandem pump in the front, the number 1, and I was just doing some inspecting and I realized that the bell housing bolts, the flange to bell housing bolts are different on the new bell housing, and these are 1/2 inch by 20. You can see it. I don't think you can see it, but anyway, 1/2 inch by 13, my bad. And so what I'm gonna do is take some notes on what I need to get. 1/2 inch by 13. And obviously it's that plus the length is going to be plus the thickness of the flange. This, I think, because we're probably going to do a flat washer and a lock washer and the bolt and the flange, so I'll do a measurement on that and see how much thickness we have for all that. All right, so I got the 1 tandem pump in. I've got this hose clamp on the right side. That's tightened down. And then the hose clamp back here, which the angle kind of sucks for this, but what I use is a bit on this gun, an extension. Works. I've always done that for hose clamps my whole life pretty much, but I've got that guy in right there, but the angle was a little funky. I should have flipped the hose clamp around so I could have just gone straight down with the gun. It would have been way easier. So maybe do that if you want to make this easier in the future. So I've got it set there. I don't have the new bolts yet because I gotta go pick those up in the morning. I'm guessing they're about 1.5 inches long. And what I can do next is get the second half pump slid into place and then put the 2 side bolts in. And then it'll be on to doing those, linking hoses and those banjo bolts. And then when those are in, I'll start to do all these hydraulic lines that are capped off one by one. As you can probably reverse on the video, but you just remember that when you're putting together, we marked these things as best as we could, right? So like we did the pink and pink, or the red and red, the white and the white. And so all of this should go together pretty easily. Really putting all this stuff in, now that I got the bell housing done, motor mounts are done, these bell housing bolts are done. Putting the pumps in, tightening them down, putting all the lines in and connecting it all the way to this front pump that this big line connects to, shouldn't be more than like an hour's worth of work. And you should have this thing fired off and running. Now, obviously it may take me a little bit longer because I'm doing extra cleaning and pulling grime out and, using a lot of brake clean and videotaping and stuff like that. So it's a little bit slower for me, but it should be pretty quick for you. So if anybody, just as a reminder that if you're ever dealing with a shop and they're telling you all sorts of crazy things like, oh, you got to replace the entire tandems, you can't fix them, you can't repair them, oh, it's this, oh, it's that, oh, it's broken shafts, they're just full of shit, or they haven't watched my video yet. And if they did, they would realize that this stuff's pretty simple. But that's neither here nor there. So I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to get this other tandem pump in and keep showing you what's up. I got those bolts picked up today, 1/2 inch by 13. There's a lock and a flat. They're 1.5 inch long. They're all tightened down real good, and I bumped the starter over and there's no interference, so there's no extra protrusion on the backside, so I'm not worried about that. So next up is get some of these side lines connected, make sure my hose clamps are tight on those suction lines, and then second pump. And yeah. Now I got these two these two hydraulic lines tightened down 15/16 wrench, and I just made sure also that the base nut of those 45-degree fittings were also tight. I got this side on, I got these 2 top ones on. Now I'm going to slide the secondary pump in and put those lines together. Okay, before I put this guy in, here's my secondary pump. You got to remember that there should be a black O-ring right there, and it goes in the groove. If you can see this, there's a lip right there. You want that O-ring to sit in there. And I know that on the front end, which is this end, where your silver pump that was kind of hanging out on the end, if you don't put the O-ring in there before you put that pump in, it will dribble oil on the ground. So you just got to remember to get that in there. We had this banjo bolt fitting on this guy right here. We didn't take it off, so don't have to worry about that. Just got to remember to keep that surface clean and that fitting clean and that stuff clean. And I'm going to wipe this down in a second just to double check before you put it together. And then you can put all your washers and seals and banjo bolts in. Okay, so I got that second pump sitting in place on the spline shaft. You do have to finagle this bracket around a little bit to get that guy behind it and to lift it up and get it square enough, straight enough to get it slid into place. I will say that if you remember when we first started the video, number one, we pulled the whole tandem pump off as one unit. It was definitely kind of cumbersome to get through these gaps and get it wiggled out. It's cake putting it together in two pieces, so that's what I recommend. I will say, remember that you have to use that fancy wrench I made, wherever I put it, it's in my back pocket. We have to use the fancy wrench to get this back together and to take it apart. Now, I will say that what I had to do is put this guy on all the way and then back it out a little bit to get that bolt to not interfere with the wall and be crooked going in. So you pull the pump backwards and it creates a gap and this kind of falls straight. Once you can get it started, I would get the other side started and then kind of wiggle the whole thing together, a little bit on each side until it's in. That's what I'd recommend. As you probably can notice in this video is we have that one hose that slides on the nipple. This autofocus. So hose to nipple, and then there's two fittings down there. Those ones down there are going to be the hardest thing to deal with out of the whole project, but I'll get them. I would probably recommend getting them hand started and then using like a crow's foot or something, or a cut down wrench or something, but either way. Anyway, I'm going to keep going. All right, I got this pump in and I got those two lines on the side done, and that suction line and the hose clamp. Hose clamp, I angle it to where I can get to it from the top with my long extension, kind of like I told you earlier about with that gun. Those lines on the side, that's a 15/16 wrench, and actually I was able to kind of come in from an angle like this and get them, and I actually can get both of them, so that wasn't too bad. I got those tight, I cleaned them up, I got the hose clamp tight, and next I'm going to work on that linking line, which is actually this thing right here. And I had it looking pretty, and then I obviously put it down and now it's a mess, but I've got new seals. Sorry about this autofocus thing, but come on. It's hard to do these things one-handed, but anyway, what I did is I'm gonna set these banjo bolts up like this. Okay, that's not gonna work, but I got new seals on the banjo bolts on both ends, and if I'm not holding a camera, I can set them up. There's a new one on the left and a new one on the left and then one on the right, and I can kind of set this whole thing in and start it. Remember that this big banjo bolt is a 1 1/16, and it's just gonna go on the side there, and I'll show you what it looks like in a second. So there's that big line down there. I got that in, and I got it in on this side. Got two new washers. Remember that these rubberized center crush washers are in your kit that come with your your new seals and stuff like that. This guy was the only other banjo bolt I had. There's one seal, there's two seal, and this is a 19 mil socket. So we're gonna get that snug down a little bit more. There you go. That's all there is to it. Okay, so now what I have left is two more, 1 and 2. I've got these two right here. One is a long one is a short one. And so I got two pilot control lines and then the pump up front. Sorry for this autofocus as always. That pump we're gonna put on next. I'll grab it from the back, and I might get it running today just to show you it works, but I still need to change that filter and that filter, and I'd like to dump out all the fluid. I'd like to see it work first, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna be pretty solid in a few here. All right, and so now we're gonna do this pump. We have 2 fittings on one side, which is gonna be this guy and this guy. This one goes up, this one goes on the side. 2 Allen bolts. You will have to pull this guy way back. Oops. You will have to pull that guy way back to get this pump in, and when you get it set, then you can put these guys through the bracket into the pump, into that pump. Once you get these, I'd say get these 90% of the way snug. Make sure your top through bolt, which is this guy right here, goes through the top, and then that holds this whole thing up and stabilizes it for vibration. And then we can work on putting this guy on and these guys on. And key note that you don't want to forget your new O-ring on this guy. I'm gonna go grab a new O-ring real quick and continue going forward. Make sure that your O-ring landing is clean and free of debris so it seals correctly. I think its oil will seep around this coupler and drain into here and then drain out on the ground if you don't have that O-ring in there. So I will say that I did have to put this wrench underneath the black tandem pump and lift it up to get these holes to align. This fitting did have to come out because I could not get this bolt wiggled through, so I just broke it loose, took the fitting off. Tightened those guys down. It was a it's a 5/16 Allen. Snug those down pretty good, and now I'm gonna put this fitting back in and then connect those 2 lines, and then we'll put this suction line on. Okay, so now I've got this guy on. What I did was I put this bottom half circle on, 1 bolt, 2 bolt, right? One in the rear, one in the front. And I set this guy kind of into its lip. And then I set this over the top of it like a cap, kind of like that. And then put the bolts in. And now I'll just snug it up in a cross tightening pattern. This back one, if you remember, we're probably gonna have to use a box end wrench or something to get tightened down. But other than that, all I have left is this vertical support bolt through this rubber isolator and then the battery tray, and that's all I have left. So it's pretty simple. It's coming along really well. I'm gonna try to get this thing started in a second here. So I got this guy tightened up, got all 4 of those done, and then it was just 3 bolts that I had for this battery tray. One of them, you can't get to that bolt hole with the loader arm. Let's see if I can show you. This loader arm's kind of in the way, so you only get 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one is behind that. So I might be able to lower the arm and put the 4th one in, but it didn't even have a 4th one in it when I took it apart, I don't think. So next step is throw the battery back in and turn the key and see what happens. And then the only thing left would be these covers, but I think the customer took these with him so that he could paint them while they were off. So if that's the case, then once it fires up, we're pretty much done, other than maybe changing out these two fluid filters. Okay, so it is testing time. I got the battery in. I just wanted to cover a couple things. One, remember our starting issue was we didn't have track drive on one side, and then we diagnosed it to those brass plates. Remember also that because if your loader controls work, that most likely means this is spinning. If this is spinning, that means you have enough hydraulic fluid in the tank, which creates pressure, which runs the loader. If that's spinning, that means the spline shafts on this guy, to this guy, to this guy, to this guy are working. Therefore, there's no spline issue, there's no shaft issue, there's none of that, which is what a lot of repair shops will tell you. Oh, it's the spline, the shafts are broken, you need to replace the whole thing. Well, obviously not. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start it. And by the way, I have not started it yet. It's still cold. I'm gonna start it and let it work. And if I can move the loader, that means that this is good and there's enough fluid in. And then I'm gonna try use the track drive. And I'm not gonna go anywhere really because I'm on a pallet and I don't want this to fall, but I just wanna show you kind of what I'm gonna see here. So hopefully you can hear me. I'm not sure if you can, yeah, I might have to move this light, but I'm not gonna go very far. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and start it up. Make sure my idle's on low because I don't need a lot. Okay, ready? Okay. Now I'm gonna do my loader control. Okay, my loader goes up, my loader goes down, so that's good. So now I'm gonna try track drive. I hear it loading. Let's see, what do I got here? Let me, I don't see any leaks or anything. So that's good, no leaks. So let's make sure that we have track drive. Well, okay, so I started this guy up. I could get drive on the right side, but the left side, I got hydraulic pressure because when I use the joystick to drive it, I can load up the engine and I can stall it. Also, I can see the track twitching back and forth. So it almost acts like if, for example, the parking brake is stuck on one side, but you can clearly see the parking brake pin is not engaged at all. And I have to figure out why this drive side won't turn. And I have a feeling something is seized inside the drive motor, which would really suck at this point. But at least I can run hydraulic pressure on both sides and I can make it stall out on the side that's not working, which means that it's not a hydraulic pump issue. It's not a hydraulic supply issue. It's not a fluid level issue. At this point, it might be something downstream like the drive motor. So I have it lifted up just enough to take the track off the pallet. It's just like an inch or so, just so I can slide the track off or reduce the tension and see if I can't make the drive motor work. Okay, so a second ago was saying that I had this, this is a couple days later, by the way. I have the track loose enough to where I can kind of rotate this guy. I have a pry bar that I put through here, and what I can do is I can get it to go back and forth a little bit. It's almost like it's jamming for some reason. So what I did now, which is kind of where I'm going, is I have the inspection plate off of the bottom rear, which is just 2 bolts, 1, 2. And then up in here is your drive motor, right? There it is right there. I'm gonna take these 2 lines off and put them in a bucket and see what it does. There should be fluid coming out of both lines, you know, forward and reverse. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So there's the lines, they go like this. So I'm gonna pull those out and see what happens. Make sure I got fluid coming out of both, and worst case scenario, I might find something stuck in there. My next plan of action is all those bolts, hex bolts on the back side. I'm pretty sure I can hose it down, wipe it down, and take those bolts out and basically split the drive motor and pull the swash plate out, and I might find something stuck in there. So that's kind of where I'm going right now. Okay, so update here. I decided, you know, I had to pull this drive motor, right? So what I did was I pulled the 4 bolts to pull the drive motor out, and there's not enough tension, there's not enough slack on the track, even with the tension reduced over there. And so what I did is I pulled this nut off, which is 1 and 11/16, I think. And yeah. And I put a puller on it, and what I did was I loaded the puller up as hard as I could without scaring myself, and I took a sledgehammer and took a big sledgehammer and smacked on the wheel until this went bang and it came off. But obviously the teeth of the track are stuck in the squirrel cage, and so to get the whole thing out, I need to pull the track off, really. So generally what I do in these situations is I lift up the machine and I undo this nut, and there's 2 wheels and they're separate from each other. This one obviously is in the way of your track drive teeth. So what I use there is a 1.5 inch socket. Take this nut off, and then you pull this off, right? And then once that's out of the way, you can slide the track off and that'll come out with it. Unfortunately, this is really tight in here and the puller does not grab on the backside. So what I do is I've been smacking right here with the sledge, and then I actually put this 2x4 through one wheel down to the other wheel, and I set this kind of like that. So now you got a wall to hit, and when you hit it right here, it starts to walk it out. So this guy's almost off. I just wanted to show you. Okay, so now that wheel is off. It just slid off right when I stopped the video. I'll show you. Okay, so this is what I was talking about with that 2x4 block. Now, this track can actually just slide forward, kind of like this. Actually, I'll lift it with the forklift again. This track just slides right off, and so will the drive motor. So let me pull that out and show you what I got. So the drive motor's out now. I had to pull the squirrel cage all the way off, and you see there's a square notch at the bottom. Those are for those fittings. Obviously I took the nipples off first, which are actually right there, so I can slide it out. So now I'm gonna flip this over. I'm gonna take all those bolts off the backside, and I'm gonna open up the inside. Okay, so I got all the bolts out the backside, pulled the top half off, and it looks like it is busted. So that is it, guys. So I guess I'm gonna order another one of these and then continue when that gets in. So here we are. I think it's about a week later. I got that drive motor ordered, came in this morning, well, about noon this afternoon. Here I am in the evening in the shop again. So if you remember a second ago, obviously we had that drive motor that was the shaft was all split up. Just if you're curious, this is what the inside looks like. It's just a bunch of parts, I guess. I don't know too much about this to explain this, but I could always show the inside layers of this and you know, what it takes and potentially how to fix them or rebuild them. But anyway, so I'm over here. I'm gonna throw this motor in and hook it all up and see what happens. So stay tuned. Okay, so just as a reminder, the square end, if you got obviously the drive motor's round, but it's got like a flat edge on it, right? That's gonna go on the bottom here, and that's why you got a relief cut there. These holes are through holes. So what that means is you slide the motor in this way, and actually because of the notch, I might have to correct this, but I might be able to put the fittings on the drive motor and then kind of tip it or roll it in or pull it out, hook the hoses up, and then roll it back in and slide it in. So you have your nut plates, which are these guys. These have threads in them. And these kind of come up from the back and go up like this, and you put the bolts through the front, kind of in like a sandwich. So I'm gonna go do that. So that C-shaped metal bracket that goes on the backside, I'll try to get in there in a second, but it's kind of hard to see anything. It goes one this way and then one this way. So these two bolts and then these two bolts. If you go the other way, you'll interfere with the metal bracket, actually the parking brake stuff, so it won't work. But those are tightened down. I'm gonna get it all hooked up and running and then make sure that spins in the correct direction before I go put all this together, but that's kind of what I'm working on. Let me see if I can't grab a flashlight. I need to get in there now and tighten down these two hydraulic fittings right there. I'm gonna tighten those, and then I'll put these two, clean these lines off, put them on there, and then I'm pretty much ready to run. So what's interesting about this guy is, I mean, technically once you get the track stuff off and you get to that point, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts, and it slides out, and 2 hydraulic lines and 2 nipples. So you couldn't probably get any easier than this guy, and it slides out the front. You don't have to feed it back through and then out the hole, which would be awful. But yeah, this is, by the way, I mentioned the notch, and you could leave your fittings on and tip it in. You can't. It just slides straight in, and there's no room for those fittings. So let me go tighten those nipples up, put those hydraulic lines on, and then test it. So I got those 2 nipples tightened and the 2 lines on. I'm gonna test run it and see what happens and start it. One joystick. That's it. So good for me that I got that. The problem is it's reverse of the joystick, so I got to swap those lines because I guess I didn't label them as well as I thought I did. So let me switch that and get my hands all covered in oil, and then that'll be done, and then I can put the skid plate on, and then it's put the track on and the drive and all that stuff, and then that's done. I think I still need to go through and change the 2 hydraulic filters up top and drain the tank. I will probably get to working on that. Yeah, I got those lines switched over, which was a big oily mess. I had to take a break and scrub and clean and change my gloves because, man, that was a mess. It was all down my arms. But that's done now, and it works. So I'm going to start with probably getting this lifted back up and sliding the track back to where it needs to be, getting that drive cog wheel back in, that lower idler. Where'd it go? That one over there. And yeah, it's a little hard to show you while I'm doing that, but I'll show you some sections. So I have the track on, except for over there. I got to put that drive wheel on. But I did definitely put a bunch of anti-seize on that shaft this time. Remember, that's a 1.5 inch nut, or 1 7/16, and this is 1 11/16. Yeah, 1 11/16. So I put that guy on with my 1 inch and get that one tight, and then all I got left is the track tensioner and the skid plate, and then I'm going to drive it off the pallet. Okay, fun fact, I have a 90-degree impact. Let's see if I could do this with 2 hands. I use this to get a lot of the slack out, make sure the track's all clear. And your indicator that you're going to use is right there. And what you wanted is this guy to be sitting right here, and that's your correct track tension. So probably at that point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop and I'm going to switch to my ratchet handle and just take it the rest of the way. Okay, so I also made sure to get that locking bolt in that adjuster and get it tightened down. I think it can go in a combination of different ways, but this way will work. So just got to lock that in. I have that almost there, but it just seems so freaking tight already that I don't want to go any too much further, but that's what I got. So now it's time to take it off the pallet. I guess you got to see the test drive there. So that's great because that's the first time it's come off this pallet. We used the forklift to get it on the pallet when I took it off the trailer, and we set it here. And this is where it's been ever since. So pretty awesome that this thing's done, minus changing the hydraulic oil, which I will look into, and I probably will add it to this video. But yeah, just that filter and that one down there. So this is the next day. There's my oil samples on the ground right there for the hydraulic oil. I did change the oil. I totally was in work mode here, trying to get stuff packed up and bikes worked on and stuff. And I totally forgot to make this video. But the way you do a hydraulic oil change on this machine is right underneath the belly. There's this thing right here, and there's it's a recessed hole basically, and there is I think it's don't quote me on it, it's like an 18 or a 17 millimeter bolt. No, it's 13/16. And I break that loose. I put a big oil pan under here. My oil pans, which I don't have over here anymore because I already cleaned up. That's how far I've gotten. They don't fit under the edge of this. So what I did is I put 2x4 and 2x4 and then like this and drove up on it. And that raised it enough to get right under there. Now you could go as far as putting a 2x4 on both ends, and therefore it'll actually be flat. This way it's sloped back just a hair, but it's not enough to warrant like trying too much harder to get the oil out. So anyway, drain plug there, put the pan there, let it run, 2 mason jars full of oil. They're really dark, and they have a little silver to them, just a little bit, but no like chunks of metal, no shavings, nothing like that. So I'm not too worried about it. I mean, the machine does have 1,000 hours. I will say that I took out, so the book says that there's about 10 gallons of hydraulic oil in this thing, which is interesting because only 4 gallons came out and only 7 gallons went back in. So there's probably a mix between, you know, it leaking and bad lines and age and all this stuff. And so it's probably running a little low on oil, which might have contributed to some of these issues. I don't know. I can't tell you if they have. So I did the draining, took the samples. Here is your hydraulic oil filter. That filter, I totally spaced. I thought that was another hydraulic oil filter based on the lines and whatnot, but that is actually a remote mount engine oil filter for the engine. I'm used to like the Bobcats and stuff where you take the side covers off and you reach in and take a side oil filter off the engine. But based on the location of this engine, it's too hard to get to. So I guess they use this remote oil filter. So anyway, I did that by accident. That's brand new. New filter, that's brand new. Even says 997 hours on it. And then try to do this with messy, oily hands. Down in here, there's a cap. That cap down there, if you take the cap out, you can pull a dipstick out, and then you can pull a screen out. The screen was clean. I took the dipstick and measured. Obviously, it didn't really register before I drained the oil. I drained all the oil. I put 5 gallons in. It didn't barely register. It was at the tip. And then I put some more in. I got up to about 7, and now we're at the just over the first mark. I think there's 2 marks and then the tip. So you got tip, mark, and then the rest of the dipstick. So we're just over the first mark. I need more oil, but I wanted to let this thing settle, take it off the blocks and see if it comes up. I don't want to overfill it or nothing. I filled it with oil, put the drain plug in, cleaned up, did the filters, and then ran it. Loader goes up and down, everything works. And so this is ready for pickup, and the customer is actually coming over tomorrow afternoon at noon, and this thing's gonna go bye-bye. Hope you enjoyed this project. It's been a long one. It's not too bad if you, for example, like if you're in a shop and you work on stuff all day long. I'm in and out of the shop between mobile and shop work. So finding the time has been kind of a pain. And then also I got a lot going on. Plus I've been ordering parts and waiting for parts like the drive motor and everything else. But the whole project isn't too bad. So depending on what kind of quotes you're getting from a shop, or if somebody looks into it, and they're like, oh, there's no drive, it's probably this, you need the whole tandem pump, you need this, you need that, you need to spend 15 grand, whatever, just buy a new machine. There is a lot of things to look at before you go, too crazy. And remember, if somebody tells you can't rebuild these tandem pumps, they're lying to you, or they just don't know what they're talking about, or they haven't watched this video yet. Hope people have learned from this video. I know that the videos before this, I mean, every day, every couple days, every week, I get a new message, client, request, question about a TX1000 that has drive issues or hydraulic issues. So hopefully this video finds you well, and hopefully, this video answers a lot of questions and changes the world in a good way with some knowledge. Hope to hear from you soon, and enjoy fixing these machines.